My parents took my wedding fund to renovate their house, so I eloped quietly, blocked them all, and sent wedding photos with a goodbye note. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and for most of my life, I thought being a good daughter meant giving up parts of myself to keep everyone else afloat. I'm the eldest of 3. In a working-class immigrant household, that basically made me a third parent. My parents, strict, traditional, and emotionally calculating, didn't ask for help. They expected it. I was 10 when I started waking my siblings up for school. By 13, I was packing lunches. At 16, I worked a part-time job and handed over my paycheck like it was normal. My mom used to say, "The oldest child sets the tone of the family." What she meant was, if something needed doing, I did it. No questions asked. I don't remember anyone ever asking how I was doing. There were moments I resented it, sure. Watching my younger siblings play while I scrubbed dishes, or being told I couldn't go on a school trip because the money was tight. But every time I got close to pushing back, my parents would guilt me right back into place. "Don't act like we're not trying our best," my dad would say, as if I was ungrateful for even having thoughts of my own. They kept dangling the same promise in front of me. "One day, it'll all be worth it. When it's your turn, we'll be there for you." I believed that. I needed to believe that. It was the only way any of it made sense. So I swallowed my frustration and focused on the future. I told myself when I get married, they'll finally show up for me. They'll be proud. They'll celebrate me. That was the fantasy I held on to, right up until the day it shattered. When I was around 15, my grandmother pulled me aside during one of our family dinners. She handed me a little white envelope with a gold sticker sealing it shut. "This is for your wedding," she whispered, smiling like she was handing me a key to something sacred. Inside was a letter and a bank receipt. She had set aside a savings account in my name. Not much, but enough for a modest ceremony. Her words stuck with me. Every woman deserves one day that's hers. After she passed away, my parents took control of the account. At the time, I didn't question it. I was a teenager. They told me they were just keeping it safe until I needed it. I believed them. Fast forward to last year, I got engaged to Jack. He's calm where I'm anxious, soft where I've been hardened. He asked my parents for their blessing before proposing. My mom teared up. My dad gave a stiff nod. I thought they were happy. I thought, finally it's happening. This is the moment all those years of sacrifice pay off. So when Jack and I started planning the wedding, I brought up the fund. It felt surreal to even mention it. I had imagined this moment since I was a girl. My parents looked at each other and said, "We'll talk about that later." I thought maybe they were planning something big. A surprise. A gesture of love. But weeks went by. No answers. Just delays, excuses, nervous glances. Jack noticed it too. He kept asking, "Are you sure they still have it?" I didn't want to believe there was a reason to doubt them. But something in my gut had started to turn. When I officially announced our engagement, I expected warmth. Maybe even a little joy. But all I got was indifference wrapped in judgment. We had dinner at my parents' house the weekend after Jack proposed. I wore the ring. I was glowing. I had rehearsed how I'd tell them, how I'd show them the man who made me feel safe, seen. But when I said, "We're engaged," my mom barely looked up from her plate. My dad muttered, "That's fast, don't you think?" My younger brother rolled his eyes and joked, "Hope he knows what he's getting into." Jack reached for my hand under the table, trying to keep me grounded, but my heart was already sinking. I laughed it off and said, "We want to have a small ceremony next summer." My mom scoffed. "With what money?" I stared at her. I hadn't even asked about the fund yet. That was the moment something clicked. This wasn't surprise. It was evasion, guilt. The rest of dinner was a blur. My parents didn't ask how Jack proposed, didn't want to see the ring, didn't even offer a toast. Instead, my dad ranted about the economy, how weddings are a waste, how real marriages aren't about parties. That night, I sat in the passenger seat of Jack's car and cried. Not because they didn't approve, honestly, I could live with that, but because they didn't care. Not really. Not about me, not about what this moment meant to me. Jack said gently, "I love you. And we'll figure this out, with or without them." But a question started to grow inside me like a splinter. If they could ignore this milestone, what else were they hiding? A week later, I asked my mom about the wedding fund, directly this time. No hinting, no dancing around it. I waited until we were alone in the kitchen while she chopped vegetables for dinner. I said, "Hey, I was hoping we could talk about the account Nana left me." She didn't look up. Just kept slicing. "It's not a good time right now," she said. "Your dad's been handling that stuff." "But it's been over a month," I pushed. "Can I at least get the account info so Jack and I can budget?" She finally looked up and her eyes narrowed just slightly. "Why are you being so impatient?" she asked. "You always used to trust us." That line hit me harder than I expected. You used to trust us. Like trust was a lever I was selfishly pulling back. I swallowed hard and nodded, retreating like a scolded child. But something felt wrong. Their behavior wasn't just avoidant anymore, it felt guilty. Later that night, I logged into the bank's online portal. It was the first time I'd touched the account in years. I remembered the old login from the paperwork Nana gave me. But when I got in, my heart stopped. Balance, $14.76. It had once been over $15,000. I refreshed the page twice, convinced it was an error. But the transaction history told a different story. Withdrawals, transfers, purchases. The money had been disappearing for months, quietly, casually. My hands were shaking. I couldn't breathe. I texted Jack one line. They emptied it. And I realized in that moment, the betrayal had already happened. I was just late to the reveal. The next morning I confronted them. I didn't come in angry. Not yet. I came in confused, scared, heartbroken. I sat at the dining table where I'd done homework, folded laundry, cried silently during teenage heartbreaks. Now I was here to ask the people who raised me why they stole from me. My dad was reading the newspaper. My mom was on her phone. I placed my laptop on the table and turned it to face them. The bank statement was up. "Can we talk about this?" My dad barely glanced at the screen. My mom sighed like I'd just accused them of murder. "It's not what you think," she said. But she didn't deny it. "So what is it then?" I asked. My voice was quiet, shaking. "That money was for my wedding." My dad folded the newspaper. "We needed it for the house. The roof was leaking. The plumbing was falling apart. You think we did it for fun?" I blinked. "You didn't even tell me." "We didn't think you'd understand," my mom said. "You were always so emotional about that money." "We didn't want to stress you out." I sat there stunned. It wasn't just the theft, it was the gaslighting. The way they made it sound like I was the unreasonable one, like I was immature for being upset that they spent my inheritance on granite countertops and a new fence. "You said that money was mine," I whispered. "You promised Nana." My mom crossed her arms. "And we're still your parents. We know what's best. You'll thank us one day." That's when something in me cracked. Not loud, not explosive, just done. I got up from the table and walked out, knowing nothing was sacred in this house, not even promises made by the dead. I thought, naively, that someone would have my back. That once I told the truth, people would understand. I reached out to my aunt first, my mom's sister. She'd always seemed kind, the cool relative who gave me gum at family dinners and whispered jokes behind my mom's back. I told her everything, how the money was meant for my wedding, how I found the empty account, how my parents justified it like I was overreacting. She paused, then said, "Sweetie, your parents have done so much for you. Maybe you should just be grateful they helped raise you at all." I blinked. They didn't help raise me. I raised their kids. I cooked, cleaned, worked part-time to cover bills, and gave up my entire teenage life for this family. She laughed uncomfortably. "Oh, honey, all eldest daughters go through that. It's not abuse. It's tradition." That word. Tradition. A noose disguised as a necklace. One by one, I reached out to cousins, uncles, even close family friends. Every response was a variation of the same theme. Family comes first, you shouldn't air dirty laundry, you'll regret making a scene over money. Even my younger sister, who I thought would understand, texted me, "I wish you'd stop making mom and dad feel like villains. They're trying their best." It was like screaming into a void. My entire life I had been their safety net, their unpaid nanny, their emotional punching bag. And now, when I needed even an ounce of support, they pulled the rug out and called me ungrateful for falling. Jack was the only one who didn't flinch. He held me, kissed my forehead, and said, "You don't owe them a damn thing." Not anymore. But part of me still wondered if I was crazy, because when everyone tells you the same lie, it starts to sound like truth. A week later, Jack insisted I come with him to his parents' house for dinner. I didn't want to go. I felt raw, exposed like a walking bruise. But he wouldn't take no for an answer. "You need to be around people who actually care about you," he said. And he was right. I was drowning in my own silence. When we arrived, his mom opened the door with the biggest smile and immediately pulled me into a hug. "Our daughter-in-law," she said warmly. Our. It took everything in me not to cry right then. Dinner was roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and real, uninterrupted joy. They asked questions about the wedding, not about the money or the drama, just genuine questions. "What colors are you thinking? Do you want something outdoors?" Jack's dad offered to drive us to a venue they'd seen near the lake. Eventually, I told them what happened. Not the watered-down version, the whole thing. I expected the usual awkward pause, the soft suggestions to forgive or be the bigger person. But instead, Jack's mom took my hand and said, "That money was meant for you. What they did was wrong. I don't care if they're family, stealing is stealing." Jack's dad added, "You're not overreacting. You've been underreacting for years. I nearly broke. Not from sadness, just the relief of finally being believed. We stayed for hours. His parents even offered to help us with wedding costs, saying it wasn't a handout. It was a gift. From people who wanted to see us happy. That night, driving home, I whispered to Jack, "Is this what real love feels like?" He looked over and said, "No, this is what love is supposed to feel like." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. But I also knew I needed to confront what I'd been avoiding. A part of me still held on to hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, if I gave them one last chance, they'd meet me halfway. Maybe the guilt would finally sink in. Maybe they'd say the words I needed to hear. "We're sorry. We'll make it right." So I asked my parents to meet me at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. No shouting, no door slamming, no family members to triangulate the conversation. Just us. I chose a corner table near the window. Jack offered to come, but I told him I needed to do this on my own. They arrived 10 minutes late. My mom was on her phone. My dad didn't make eye contact. I started gently. I said I wasn't trying to attack them. I just wanted to understand. I told them I felt betrayed, not just by the money, but by the way they dismissed my feelings, my engagement, my future. My mom didn't flinch. "We've already explained ourselves," she said, sipping her latte. "We did what we had to do." "And what about what I had to do?" I asked. "All those years I gave up for this family?" "That money was all I had." My dad spoke then, finally. "Jack should be stepping up. Why are you so focused on what you're owed? Marriage is about building together, not keeping score." I looked at them both. My heart didn't break. It hardened. "So that's it?" I asked. "No apology? No acknowledgement?" My mom gave a tight smile. "We're not villains. You're just being dramatic. If you walk away over this, don't come crawling back." Something inside me went cold. I stood up slowly, slipped my engagement ring off my finger, and placed it on the table, not to return it, but to show them what they would never touch again. "I'm not coming back," I said, "and you won't see me at the wedding." And with that, I walked out, into sunlight, into silence, into freedom that finally felt real. Jack didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't need to. The second I walked through the door after that coffee shop meeting, he wrapped me in the kind of hug that makes your spine stop shaking. I didn't even speak. I just cried into his chest until the weight started to shift. Not disappear, just shift. Later that night, he said softly, "What if we just did it our way?" I looked up. "You mean elope?" He nodded. "No more asking permission. No more begging for support from people who never gave it. Just you and me. Vows, rings, peace." At first I laughed, part nerves, part disbelief. But then it clicked. We didn't need their money. We didn't need their approval. What we needed was freedom, and a future that started without chains. So we planned it, quietly, secretly. Jack's parents offered to help, again. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. His mom said, "Every bride deserves beauty," and insisted on covering the dress. His dad found a little coastal town with a cliffside chapel that looked like something out of a movie. We set a date 4 weeks out. No bridal party, no drama. Just love. We booked a photographer, wrote our vows, and started gathering the small pieces: rings, flowers, the simplest cake. It wasn't extravagant, but it felt like us. It felt sacred. Every time I told someone no, no guest list, no reception, no invitations, I felt lighter. Like I was peeling away everything fake, everything performative. What was left was the truth. A wedding built not on guilt or expectations, but on choice. And every day closer to that date, I felt more certain. I wasn't just marrying Jack. I was marrying myself. To the version of me I was finally allowed to be. The night before the ceremony, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, holding my phone like it was some kind of bomb. Jack was asleep beside me, his breathing slow and even, unaware that I was waging war in my head. My heart raced. My thumb hovered over each contact. Mom, Dad, my siblings, my aunt, even a few cousins who had parroted the party line. They did what they had to do. I didn't want drama tomorrow. I didn't want a last-minute guilt trip or a fake emergency to pull me back into their orbit. I knew them. They'd find a way to ruin it if they had even a sliver of access. So I started blocking, one by one. Message, block. Call, a block. Social media, gone. It wasn't petty. It was necessary. Like closing a door before a storm could blow through it. Like finally locking up a house I no longer lived in. Then I opened my notes app and typed out a short letter. Just enough to say what needed saying. No insults. No begging. Just truth. By the time you read this, I'll be married. You chose yourselves. I chose peace. I won't spend my life waiting to be loved correctly. Goodbye. I attached a photo from our engagement shoot, Jack holding my hand. Both of us laughing like we'd just escaped a prison. I scheduled it to send at 9 a.m. the next morning, just as we'd be exchanging vows. Then I turned off my phone, placed it face down on the nightstand, and crawled under the covers beside Jack. I listened to his breathing, matched it, let it lull me into stillness. And as I drifted off, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not fear. Not regret, relief. The morning of our wedding, the air smelled like sea salt and morning fog. The sky was soft gray with streaks of sunlight fighting through the clouds like it knew what the day meant to us. I woke up before Jack and just sat by the window, watching the waves crash against the cliffside. It was the first morning in years where I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. We got ready in separate rooms of the little inn. Jack's mom zipped up my dress, simple ivory lace, nothing fancy, but it made me feel like myself. She teared up when she looked at me and whispered, "Your real life starts today, sweetheart." I squeezed her hand and nodded. When I stepped out and saw Jack waiting at the edge of the cliff, my breath caught. No tuxedo, just a dark navy suit and that smile. The one that made me feel like no matter how wrecked the world felt, I'd always have a place to land. The officiant was an old woman from the town who said she only did weddings that felt like poetry. I liked that. We said our vows with the ocean roaring behind us. Mine shook. His didn't. He said, "I promise to never make you feel like you're too much or not enough. I promise to stand beside you, not above you. I promise to be your peace." I barely got mine out, but I ended with, "I choose you and I choose myself." We kissed. The wind picked up like it was cheering. No screaming relatives. No judgmental stares. No fake hugs from people who secretly hoped I'd fall apart. Just us. Just love. As we walked back down the path, hand in hand, I felt a weight slide off my shoulders so completely I almost stumbled. I wasn't just leaving my past behind. I was walking straight into the life I built without them. By the time we got back to the inn and changed into comfy clothes, me in a sundress, Jack in a hoodie, the scheduled email had already detonated. I opened my laptop like someone checking the aftermath of a controlled explosion. The message had been sent at exactly 9 a.m., right on cue. No errors, no regrets in my inbox, unread messages. In my voicemail, missed calls. In my blocked messages folder, chaos. My mom had sent a string of unhinged emails, the kind that start off composed and devolve into insults within 2 paragraphs. "After everything we've done for you," quickly turned into, "You'll regret this. You're dead to us." My dad, more measured, wrote, "This is your decision. Just remember who changed first. Cold. Sterile. like a man absolving himself of guilt by pinning it on my independence. One cousin had the nerve to comment on the photo I'd attached. "You could have at least invited the family who raised you." I laughed. Actually laughed. Because they didn't raise me. They used me, groomed me to serve, and now they were shocked I'd cut the strings. Jack looked over my shoulder as I skimmed through the chaos. "Want me to help you delete them?" I shook my head. "No, let them stay unread. Let that be the last word." We left for a 2-day road trip honeymoon. No plan, just playlists and back roads. Every time I checked my phone, more messages. Each one less effective than the last. Each one proof that leaving had been the right choice. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel sad. I felt clean. Because for the first time in my life, their noise wasn't inside my head anymore. It was just background static I no longer had to hear. And that silence? It was beautiful. I should have known they wouldn't take silence as an ending. 2 weeks after the wedding, I got a DM from my cousin Priya, one of the few who hadn't picked a side during the fallout. It read, "Hey, just so you know, your parents are telling people you stole the wedding fund and ran off." She even attached screenshots, Facebook posts, WhatsApp chats, long rants from my mom painting herself as the sacrificing parent betrayed by a greedy daughter. My dad commented under one, "We gave her everything, and this is how she repays us." They even implied Jack manipulated me into cutting them off, that I was too emotional to make decisions, that I used them. I sat there, scrolling through the lies, feeling a strange combination of disgust and validation, because this was who they really were, and now they weren't hiding it. Jack looked over my shoulder, jaw tight. "We can shut this down. Post the truth." "You have every right," I shook my head. "Let them talk," because I knew the people who mattered didn't believe them. And the ones who did, they were never really on my side to begin with, still it stung. It always stings when people rewrite your pain into a story that flatters them. When the villain puts on your face and cries louder than you ever did. But I didn't owe them the spotlight. I didn't need to clear my name in a play I never auditioned for. Instead, I posted a photo. Just one, no caption. Me and Jack on a mountaintop, laughing like the world had never broken us. Let them spin their stories. I was too busy living mine. A month after the elopement, an envelope showed up at our door. No return address, just my name, handwritten in slanted, careful cursive I didn't recognize. I opened it slowly, thinking maybe it was another veiled attack from extended family, but instead, a gentle scent of lavender hit me, like old books or a sweater worn by someone kind. Inside was a letter. 3 pages penned in that same neat handwriting, and a photo, me at 9 years old sitting on my grandmother's lap, both of us smiling with messy hair and matching cardigans. The letter began, "My name is Beatrice. I'm your grandmother's sister. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you." She went on to explain how after my grandmother's passing, she'd kept an eye on the family from a distance. She wrote about how proud my grandmother had been to set aside that wedding fund, how she used to talk about it with joy, imagining me walking down the aisle one day, not in riches, but in peace. Then she wrote this. "I don't know what happened exactly, but I heard the whispers. I just want you to know, your grandmother would have never wanted you to feel used. She left that money for you, not for paint or tile or new windows. For you." Tears welled up before I finished reading. Enclosed was a small check, $2,000. Barely a fraction of what had been taken, but somehow worth more than the entire original fund, because it wasn't about money. It was about someone seeing me. Someone remembering the little girl who got lost in everyone else's needs. Jack held me that night while I cried into his chest. Not because I was sad, but because, for once, the kindness felt louder than the betrayal, and maybe that's how healing really starts, when love finally finds you from the places you least expect. It's strange, the kind of peace that comes from subtraction. Life without them isn't loud. There are no weekly phone calls filled with backhanded advice. No group texts pressuring me to come home for birthdays I was only ever expected to serve, not celebrate. The silence used to feel empty. Now it feels earned. I wake up next to Jack in a small apartment we both adore, with thrifted furniture and too many plants. We take morning walks to a nearby coffee shop and laugh about the tiniest things. Burnt toast, our neighbor's cat that always tries to sneak inside. "It's not glamorous." "It's soft." And I think softness is something I never really knew I deserved until now. Therapy helped me unpack the weight I'd been dragging for decades. The guilt, the shame, the constant need to prove I was enough to people who thrived on keeping me small. My therapist once said, "Sometimes surviving a family feels like crawling out of a burning house and apologizing for the mess." That line stuck with me. I've stopped apologizing. Jack's parents have become family in the truest sense. They check in, they listen, they ask how I'm really doing. When I shared the letter from Beatrice, his mom cried and framed the photo of me and my grandmother. It's on our bookshelf now, beside our wedding photo. 2 versions of me. The little girl who tried so hard to be good, and the woman who finally stopped trying to be what they wanted. I don't miss the chaos. I don't miss the manipulation dressed up as tradition. And most of all, I don't miss being invisible in my own life. Sometimes healing isn't a firework. It's a quiet morning where no one is yelling and no one is owed, and in that stillness, I've finally found myself. I used to think family was everything, that no matter how deep the wounds ran, no matter how many times I was silenced, dismissed, or betrayed, it was still my job to forgive, to stay, to serve. That being the good daughter meant swallowing hurt with a smile and calling it strength. But I don't believe that anymore. Family, I've learned, isn't just blood. It's not who raised you, it's who sees you. It's who roots for you when you're finally choosing yourself. And sometimes, the most radical act of love is walking away from people who call your freedom disrespect. If you're watching this and you've been made to feel selfish for having boundaries, let me say it clearly. You don't owe people who spend your joy. Not explanations. Not access. Not a front row seat to the life they tried to sabotage. It's okay to mourn what you never had. I did. I grieved the idea of parents who would have cried happy tears at my wedding instead of throwing tantrums over losing control. I grieved the family who might have cheered for my happiness instead of twisting it into betrayal. But then I realized I don't need their applause. I have a husband who sees me, in-laws who love me, friends who celebrate my healing, not just my performance. I have peace. And that's worth more than any check or childhood promise. I keep that wedding photo on my nightstand, not to remember the day I got married, but to remember the day I chose me. The day I stopped shrinking. So if you're stuck in a family that only loves you when you're quiet, get loud. Or get gone. Either way, choose you. Because the happiest version of yourself, they don't need permission to exist. They just need a way out. And once you find that exit, don't look back.